So testimonies are so powerful. We're called to share a testimony. We're called to share what Jesus has done in our lives and through our lives. So this is a place that pushes those moments to where you're going to be raw and unfiltered. We're not worried about what the back row thinks. We're only worried about what Jesus has done in our life. And so tonight, I'm proud to introduce, I met you here. This is where I met you. And I invited you to share your testimony. And so you're coming up, and we had a brief talk before. And this is a vulnerable point in your life, but it's a redeemed life, and it's a life you're going to share with us, right? And so thank you for coming. I'm going to turn your mic on. Welcome to the floor.
Hi, my name is Tim Mabels. This is different for me, all right? Because I'm going to say a few things that only one person knows, my wife, and I wouldn't be here today without her, I want you to know. But I was raised right here in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, and first off, I want to thank John and his wife for letting me have this opportunity. But I'm going to tell you, mine was not a good childhood. And my grandparents were Pentecostal, and they were loving, great people. My mother hated being a mother, and she hated us for having to be a mother. She met and married my stepfather, and you will never hear me call him stepfather again. He was the only man I ever knew that deserved to be called daddy, and that's what he was. He was twice my mother's age, and he had grown children. They were all grown. And he met and married my mother when I was about a year old. Well, anyway, they weren't church-going people, but like I said, my grandparents were, and we were there. If the doors weren't open, we were in the parking lot waiting on somebody to unlock them. And I went to church religiously until the age of 9. Well, after that too, but at 9, things changed. My father's youngest daughter was married to a pastor. They lived in Pelahatchie, Mississippi. And they always came, and they were always real nice, real sweet people, you know. Well, they invited us to come and stay with them one weekend. And they lived in a church, in the basement of a church in Pelahatchie, Mississippi. My sister and I actually went one time before that, but things happened, and anyway, the next weekend, my sister wanted to go, but I knew horrible things had happened to me the weekend before, and I didn't want to go. But I knew my sister was going to go because I was afraid to tell what had happened, because y'all's mother may have been like my mother. If you get in trouble when you're down there, when you get at home, you're really going to get in trouble. Well, I got in trouble, so to speak, when I was down there, so I went with my sister, and he tied us to a bed and made us recite Bible stories. And if we didn't get them right, he beat us for 4 days. My wife can tell you I still have the scars, mentally and physically. I was 9, my sister was 11. I watched him rape her. And on Sunday, before we went home, he put us in a bathtub full of ice water, and he poured alcohol in it, tried to heal the wounds. We had no hide from the middle of our back to the top of our knees, and he stopped at our knees because my sister had to wear dresses to church. Didn't want anybody to see. So I didn't care nothing about church after that. I did not care about church. My grandparents still tried to get us to go, but I refused to go. Well, being as it was my father's daughter, it kind of hit him hard. He was a bad alcoholic. My mother too, both of them. And so I guess in his way of trying to make things up to us, he started taking me everywhere with him. And by age 10, I was driving him back and forth to the bars. And by the age of 15, I couldn't anymore because I was as drunk as he was. Started drinking at 12, 13 years old, and just went on. 15 years old, well, let me back up a little bit. 12 years old. This had made me a kind of a ornery person, as you can imagine, but I was determined then that I wasn't going to let anybody touch me, hurt me, or my sister again. So I started acting out, being violent. I remember 12 years old, I had a bully on the school bus, lived down the road from me. So I knew they went to church on Wednesday night. So I went and broke into his house, and I killed his hamster. And I nailed it to the front door of his apartment. And the next day when I got on the school bus, he would walk, I have big ears, he thumped me on me. Anyway, he was walking toward me, and I just looked at him, and I said, "How's your hamster?" And he never messed with me again. So I learned at an early age that if you do things like that, you get results, you get left alone. So by the time I was 15, I was a full-fledged alcoholic, just drinking constantly. And I knew my wife back then, too. We grew up right down the road from each other. She said I was mean to her, but I wasn't. I was not. Bottle rockets were a toy. Anyway, I was at a local hangout when I was 15 years old, and a guy thought that I was with his girlfriend. We were all drunk, and anyway, he stabbed me in the arm with a knife, and I happened to have a gun in my back pocket, so I pulled it out, and he took off running, and I shot him. Well, this was October of 1991. Things were a little different back then. So I never went to jail that night. My dad knew the sheriff real well, and anyway, I ended up being in trouble, and they charged me as a juvenile with aggravated assault. So I got locked up and went to the first of a couple of children's homes, and but they made a deal with my parents and said, if I stay out of trouble the whole time I'm in there, then they'll let me out when I'm 18, and they did. And the only good thing that come out of that was, at the time, I thought, all the people that I met, right? I met all the wrong people. But I got out and I got married to my first wife, and had 2 beautiful children, still drinking. And my youngest daughter was about 5 years old, and my mother was still an alcoholic, and my father had passed long since. But my daughter came home one time, and she said something that hit me kind of hard. She said, "Are we going back to drunk grannies tomorrow?" And I got to thinking of drunk granny with drunk daddy, you know. So that went on. I decided I was going to quit drinking. So I tried to quit for a while. Didn't work out too well until I found methamphetamines. Oh, yeah. Quit drinking right off. I was 28 years old, and now I had a new addiction. People always said I was able to maintain. I don't know really what that means, except for I can tell you that I was able to hide it. I had to hide it all the time because my family didn't do drugs. But what that did was that let me get deeper and deeper into an addiction that lasted from the beginning, 35 years. 35 years that I did some type of drug. Well, I worked on the road a lot. I was gone, averaged about 300 days a year gone. It's easy to hide it then, you know. And then in 2009, I decided to come home and work. I was going to work around home. Well, I got a job at the Veterans Affairs home in Kosciuszko, where I met my second wife. We had known each other since we were babies, and anyway, we were both married, so things weren't the best. But we ended up getting together, and I left my first wife, and I moved into an apartment because she didn't do drugs. And I kept this little apartment on the side, and I doing my methamphetamines, coke, whatever, you know, any port in a storm, to be honest with you. Until one day, it's hard to keep all this together and do all these drugs. So what did I decide to do? I went to my wife, and I told her, I said, that's something I want to show you. Now, mind you, she couldn't pick out methamphetamines or just about any other drug out of a crowd of two. But I told her about it, and she said, "Ooh," and she warned me. She told me, she said, if I like something, I usually like it. She said, I don't know. And what did her loving, caring, supposed to protect her husband do? I said, it's going to be all right. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't all right. It started a downward spiral for the two of us instead of just the one of us, you know. We ended up getting into a good bit of trouble in 2016, went through drug court, graduated drug court, only to be high when I got my coin when one of the greatest guys to ever come through drug court, Mr. Mike Perrigan, handed us our coin. I was high at that time, you know, just being honest with you. And so right back to drugs, right back to doing the same old thing that I've done my whole life. And so a couple of years ago, got into some more trouble. And this is, I want to let you know how the good Lord works, because I've been running from him. Not only, I want to tell you, I wasn't just running from him. I was trying to talk you out of loving him. I could tell you a million reasons why God didn't exist, why he wasn't in front of you anymore. He didn't care about you. Until December the 15th, 2023, when that picture was taken, the one on the right. Picked up my third felony in a year, and went into the county jail. 30 other men in the dorm with us, in the zone with us, and I laid up on my bunk. And a man that I will never forget as long as I live, Brother George Ward, came in. Do you know him? Oh, God bless him, man. Let me tell you, I met him in the county jail, and Brother George is something special. Let me tell you, he is. And he gives his time when he doesn't have to. But I was laid up in the bed, and they said he was coming in, and I was laying there. And he would come down through with his Bible, and he would stop at every bunk, and he would say, hey, you come on, listen to me. And I just kind of leaned up, and I was on top bunk. He shook my foot there, and I just leaned up, and I said, yeah, I'll hear you from here. He said, no, come on down, talk to me. And I didn't. Anyway, he made his pass, and he made another pass, and he came back, and he grabbed my foot again. He said, come on. He said, I think I got something you want to hear. And I come down, and I sat down in front of him, and he went to telling me what his little story was, how he was taking care of people. Anyway, I won't get into everything we said, but 20 minutes later, this man had me down on my knees with my arms raised in the air, crying in front of 35 other men, begging for forgiveness. And Brother George, he is something special. And so I had another friend of mine in there named David Ladd, and he was into his Bible pretty good. So we started doing a little praying together. We started a little prayer group every night, and I was sincere. Now I'm gonna tell you, I was sincere. I was going to get out and I was going to do right. Well, it seemed like every time I went to court, something happened that kept me in there. Now we're talking about little old me. First off, I get in there, and like I said, it was my third felony in a year. Well, they were determined they weren't going to let me out, but they put me on a $100,000 bond. My wife was talking to people about how to sign up the house. And I was like, ooh, we might get out anyway. Wake up the next morning, I'm on a $500,000 bond. So all these things just kept happening. I kept going to court and hired a lawyer and all this stuff, and still, I'm right there in that jail cell. Every time I went to court, I just couldn't get out. So I kept going to my brother, David, and I kept telling him, I said, I don't know what's going on. I said, man, I'm doing right. I'm praying. I'm believing. I'm in my Bible. I'm reading the scriptures. I'm doing all these things. But now let me tell you the truth, okay? The truth that hit me a little while later on. I was writing a letter to my wife every day, and I had an old tortilla package that I would stick these letters in, and every so often I'd mail her one. Well, also in that package, I had another sheet of paper, and it was all these things that I had stolen that I hadn't got caught with yet, that I had hid out. And I was talking to my brother David one day, and he said, just pray about it. Something will happen. Something will happen. Something will break free for you. So I went back to my bunk and wrote my wife another letter. And I reached up under my mattress and I pulled that piece of that tortilla package out. And I went to put that letter in there, and out came that list of all that stuff that I had stolen. Hit right between my feet. And it was a slap in the face. It was the good Lord telling me, saying, you see, are you really serious? And I picked up that piece of paper and I went back to my buddy, David, and I told him, I said, man, I've been lying to myself, to God, and to everybody else. I said, because let me tell you, I was not going to turn it in. That wasn't why I had the list. And I said, I am in here still because of me. And he told me, he said, well, you need to tell your wife that. He said, you need to tell her the truth. So I sat down and I wrote her another letter that night. And I told her, I said, I'm in here because of me, because I was playing myself. Because subconsciously, or however you want to say it, I was still going to go out and do. I went out and stole again, but I still had all that stuff that wasn't mine. And so I wrote that letter, and I went back to my buddy, and I told him, I said, I wrote this letter not just to my wife, but to my daughters. Because my youngest daughter, that's my ride or die buddy. All right? She was my fishing partner. She was my everything. When I got locked up that time, I went and called her. I don't know how many of y'all have made that phone call from the county jail, but it's not a fun one, especially not the third time in a year. But anyway, I told her, I said, Jane Page, I said, I'm in jail. I said, I'm locked up. I said, I've been messing up again. I've been doing meth. And she said something to me that I'll never forget, something that really hurt. She told me, she said, Daddy, if you wasn't honest with me when you called, she said, I wasn't going to forgive you this time. And buddy, that hurt. That took me out. So anyway, I wrote these letters to my wife and to my daughters, and I went back and I told my buddy, I said, I wrote them. I wrote these letters right here. He said, you can't keep them. He said, you have to mail those letters. So I did. And a few days later, I got a call from my wife, who I don't know how, but she's still with me, sticking with me. And she cried. She told me, she said, well, I think you actually maybe you're making a change. Well, also, while I was in jail, my daughter called. My youngest granddaughter was molested while I was in there by a family friend on her father's side. And I had a lot of hate built up. I mean, I was wanting out for a lot of different reasons. But the good Lord kept me right where I needed to be. And so I finally get out, and drug court requires you to go to rehab, which I did. Went to rehab. And that was another, let me tell you, huge blessing. Because I went to the Denton House in Greenwood, Mississippi, and met a lady. I don't know if y'all know her or not, but her name's Miss Casey Wood Barrington. If you don't know her, look her up on Facebook. She is an absolute angel. But she has prayer meetings every Saturday morning at the Denton House, and I was going to them, absolutely. But and I sat and I talked with her, and I told her what was going on with my granddaughter, and I told her, I said, you know, this is a pain that's inside of me that I just can't get past. And I know the Bible says that you have to give to get forgiveness. And but there's some things, you know, at that time, there's some things you just can't forgive. But she said something to me. This will be the third thing that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. But she looked at me and she put her arm on my shoulder and she said, you know, God loves him too. And that hit me. I was like, so she told me, she said, I want you to do something for me. She said, I want you to go to your room, and she said, I want you to pray for that man every day for 2 weeks. He said, let's just see how it works. So I did. I started out, dear God, I hope the man gets what he deserves. That's about the best I can get for him. And within a week, I wasn't praying that anymore. I was praying, dear God, I pray that man comes to you and realizes what he's done and the harm that he's committed, and I hope that he comes to you like I do, asking for forgiveness. And by the end of 2 weeks, I went to her and I told her, I said, you know, it's almost impossible to hate someone you're praying for every day. She said, it sure is, isn't it? I said, yes, it sure is. Well, so that's just a little bit of how God has come back into my life and really, really just kind of smothered me with love. Because I'm going to tell you, if anybody here believes you don't deserve it, I didn't. I really didn't. But he never left me. He really never left me. And looking back now, throughout my younger years, when I was running from him, hating him, he was protecting me. Because I've been in some situations I should have never been in, never came out of. And I'm only here by the grace of God. We're all here. All of us being here is just a testament to what an awesome King we serve. And I promise you, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been here. But the blessings just keep coming, you know, they just kept coming. I got out of rehab. Look, a 3 or 4 time felon, you know, finding a job, getting a job, it can be hard. I got out on a Friday, I got out on a Thursday or a Friday, and I went out looking for a job. And that Monday morning, I woke up with a text message on my phone. A friend of mine that I helped him out a few years past, getting a job at the VA, as a matter of fact. He called me, he had a text message on my phone. He said, hey, buddy, he said, if you want a job, come on down here to the shop. I don't know if you want to do mechanic work, but if you want to, come on in. So I went on down. Well, when you start out drug court, you got to go to take drug tests twice a week, Monday and Thursday. That's a hard way to start out a job interview, you know. But this guy, I've known him since we were in high school. He looked at me and he said, Tim, he said, all I need you to tell me is that you're done with that stuff. If you're done with it, he said, you got a job. He said, you can go home, change clothes. I said, okay. So I did. Well, the blessings didn't just stop there. His father happens to be a pastor. And my wife and I were looking for a church, and she had grown up in a certain church in town, and we got up that night, that Wednesday night, and I said, look, we need to find a church. We need to go to church. I said, I need to get back in the church and stay there. And so we went by her childhood church, and they weren't having church. So my stepdaughter there, a little sweetheart, and I wish y'all would have let her sing. That would have been a lot easier to follow than the performance y'all put on, which was great. But she can sing. She can. Yeah, I got some video if y'all want to see it when it's over with. But but she said, we can go to Crestview. I said, okay, we'll try it. And Crestview is a huge church, but let me tell you, they are the most loving, caring people you'll ever meet. So we pull up at church that night, and we walk in, and little did we know, every Wednesday night, they eat. So we're walking in, and we're like, oh, yeah, we're the people that show up for supper. And so we walk in, and they meet us at the door, and they're like, oh, we're glad you're here. Y'all come on in. They don't know us from Adam, you know. So, but they were sweet and super sweet people. And we went that night, and we went back Sunday, and they met us at the door, and they said, oh, come on in. And about 3 Sundays later, we went to the pastor, and we told him we wanted to join the church, and we wanted to be baptized. And he was happy to do it. And he owns the business that I work at. And so every time I have a problem, every time I have a little something on he's there every day. So I go to him, and I tell him these things, you know, and he, so it's like God, not only did he give me the things that I needed to come back to him, but he also gives me the things that I need to realize he's still there every day. So I try to say my prayers at night, and every morning I wake up, and this is honest to God truth. I roll over, and I touch my wife, and I look up to the Lord, and I say, thank you for another day. Let your will be done in my life, and please give me the strength we need to fight the demons that we'll face today. And I get up, I have a cup of coffee, I make her a cup of coffee and bring it to her. And we started coming here a few months ago. We haven't been here for a couple of weeks, or a couple of treatments, because of that little fellow right there. We get the opportunity, the blessing to see him every weekend, and that's another blessing. Because 2 years ago, we wouldn't have wanted him to come around, and they for sure wouldn't have wanted him to be at our house. But that's my loving family right over there. My stepson, his wife, my daughter there. A couple of years ago, this wouldn't have been possible either. It's only possible today because of the power of the King that we serve, that gave his life for us. And I have a lot of men that call me, and we started our own NA group in town. It's called the Don't Wait Recovery Group, because we don't have time to wait. And they call and they talk to me, and all the time I tell them, I say, look, just don't quit before the miracle happens. And I could not have been further from God. I mean, I could not have been further. But the most important thing that I can tell you tonight is I didn't even have to take one step backwards to catch up with him. He was always right there. And the further I kept running from him, the faster he caught up with me. But I'm truly blessed. I can't tell you this enough. If I stopped to count my blessings, I wouldn't have time to do anything else. And we are a room full of miracles. And I want to thank you all for listening to this old country boy that just wanted to tell you how God's worked in his life. I love him with all my heart, my soul. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Love you, man.